We are live. Okay, now, guys, let me put the screen down too. Some of you may notice this is. I gotta put the screen down. Sorry. All right. So, could you go ahead and introduce yourself to my class?
My name is Mark Schlereth. Some of you may recognize if you're sports fans. I'm on ESPN all the time talking about football, acting like I know what I'm talking about. For those who don't know me, that's what I do for a living. I have a national radio show, own and operate a small business here in Colorado that's spreading across the Southwest as well, and just have my hands in a lot of cookie jars because I like to be busy. So that's what you got.
All right. So, what we're talking about in this particular class, and it overarches the entire semester, is, how do they form a group online to help them grow as a professional, but not only that, but how do they keep themselves safe so that they don't make a mistake and ruin their careers before they even get started, really. So can you kind of talk about how you got into the business and then go into a little bit about how you got involved with social media as well?
Okay. As far as the business is concerned, I played in the NFL for 12 years. So I played 6 years with the Washington Redskins, then I played 6 years with the Denver Broncos. Upon my retirement, I really had thought that I was just going to kind of hang out for a couple of years and do nothing and continue to hang out with the family and help raise the kids. And my wife and I started when we were very young, so our kids are all in their 20s now. And so that's really was my plan, and that lasted for about 2 weeks. And I'm about the world's neediest person. I have to be doing things. I'm constantly busy, and I was driving my bride crazy. So she was essentially like, if you don't find something to do, we're going to get divorced because you're irritating me, which was fair because I'm very irritating. So at that point, I decided I need to find something to do. And so I got into the media business. I had always done a lot of public speaking, corporate public speaking. I spoke to schools and all kinds of different things of that nature. Really found to excel at it and really enjoy it. So I started a local radio show here in Colorado where I ended up retiring with the Denver Broncos. And as I retired, and I had a retirement speech in May of 2001. And the day after that, ESPN called me up and flew me in for an audition, and the rest is history. I auditioned, and I had a job the next day. And so now I spent 14 years talking about the National Football League and sharing my experience and sharing my knowledge of the league with that. Several years ago, as far as social media is concerned, and I'm not, as you guys witnessed, the most tech-savvy guy in the world. It took me 30 minutes to set up this 2-minute Google chat. So I really didn't know what I was doing. But ESPN approached us and asked us Twitter account. And so with that said, they essentially set my Twitter account up for me. And I just found it a very valuable tool to use from the standpoint of not only promoting what we were doing on television or what we were doing on the radio, but also as a useful interactive tool with people who, are football fans that have questions. And then as I started my green chili company, I have a gourmet line of green chili. So I have a hot pork, a medium pork, a chicken, and a vegetarian, gluten, dairy-free. It's better than good. It's stinking good. My nickname is Stink, so we threw that in our tagline. But we started that with a business partner of mine of 6 years ago. And I found that to be a very useful tool, obviously, from the standpoint of promoting my business. There have been a lot of things that I've run into with, using it too much as just a pure promotional tool and not giving enough football knowledge and really irritating people that follow me on Twitter. So, but I essentially tell people to pound sand because I am I'm more than just a football guy. I have a lot of other interests and a lot of things that I'm working on. So, there is a balance there, though, because you don't want to alienate everybody, obviously. But there is a balance, and and somehow I probably cross over the line quite a bit of being a little bit more promotional, a little bit more irritating than most people would like. But you take what you get as far as I'm concerned with this form of media, because ultimately, when it comes down to business, it's a nice promotional tool. It does get the message out. People do hear about it, but there's no real call to action via Twitter. And if you're thinking about an account that has like my account, for instance, I have 400 and some odd thousand, whatever it is, followers. If any time I tweet, I mean, what is the percentage of people that actually see that tweet? Maybe 10% of the people. And how many of those people are in an area where they can get my product? Less than 1%. And how many of that 1% are going to be called to act upon that and go out and buy it? Probably very few. But there's been a situation where we are such a desensitized consumer base because we get knocked over the head constantly from TV ads, from radio ads, from ads on every time you hit a website and you want to look up a story, there's an ad that you got to sit through for 15 seconds. So when I first got in the business, 2001, they used to say that you had to have about 7 impressions, meaning you had to see something 7 times before you were really called to act upon that, whether it is, I'm going to go out and purchase that product, or I have no interest in that product. And now they say it's closer to between 20 and 30 impressions before you're actually called to action. So it's really not a very efficient way to sell product, but it is an efficient way to let people know that you have something and let people know that it's out there. So there is a fine balance that I've learned, and you only learn that through trial and error in my estimation.
Now, he's also a grass and turf expert, I would have to say, and so if you want to know what to kind of get from your yard, good. So you talked about you've been working with this for ESPN for about 14 years now. So can you talk about how the landscape as far as reporting has changed, and how has social media changed the aspect of that?
Yeah, well, everything is at a fingertip now. So information is out there instantly. Where stories used to be vetted very thoroughly, they're not really vetted anymore. And there's so many of the blogosphere sites and things of that nature that don't really have to adhere to any journalistic integrity, so to speak. So they can just basically throw opinion out there and essentially say whatever they want. And so there has been this real push, I think, recently. Being first is more important than being right. Where it used to be even 10, 15 years ago, being right is the only thing that mattered. So now being first with the information seems to get the most buzz, even if it's not 100% correct. In an organization like ESPN, we do a pretty good job, or they do a pretty good job, of vetting stories. And I can't tell you how many times I've been doing my radio show where something broke in the first hour, and it's all over Twitter. It's all over a bunch of different websites, and pretty reliable websites. And ESPN, they call the studio, and they put a moratorium on talking about it. You cannot go with this story until we vet it thoroughly, until one of our people confirm that it is true. And so, they do a pretty good job with that. But I think the social media aspect of things have really gotten the news out there, and it becomes first. And oftentimes, like I said, it doesn't mean it's always correct. And that's really been one of the most dramatic changes I've seen with social media, is that it really has kind of changed the landscape of what reporters are doing and the importance of being the first in space.
All right, sorry, you froze up just a sec, but it's okay. We got the end of that.
Okay.
Does anybody have any?
Okay.
Let's start off with questions. Do we have any questions out here, guys? I like how when they're required to ask questions, they all clam up now.
Yeah, now you're gonna put the heavy force on them, huh?
That's right. Go ahead. Go ahead. And
trying to get it. That's all right. You can just follow my voice. You said that nowadays it's 20 to 30 impressions before people are, more likely to follow the call to action. Does that do all of the impressions have to come from the same medium?
No, I think the impressions are the impressions wherever they come from, whether it's television, whether it's radio, whether it's social media. I just think we've become such a desensitized society because whether it's Facebook, whether it's whatever it is, Twitter, we are inundated constantly with messaging, and that messaging is getting to the point where we just ignore it for the most part. So I think you see bits and pieces of it along the way, but I don't really think it matters where it comes from. Obviously, I think there's probably a little bit more sense of I don't know. I don't want to say integrity. That's the wrong word, but there's probably a little bit stronger impression if you're watching your favorite television show and you're really into it, and a commercial comes on there. Then you get hit with an call to action on Twitter. So it probably has a little bit more weight on the TV side of things, but still, I think the average call to action just takes a lot of time, and you really have to hit your target audience with very specific messaging before they're willing to act. And I think there's so much information at your fingertips now. You can go find reviews and you can go do all those things if you're a really savvy consumer. So you're not in a rush to do anything anymore. So because there is so much information at your fingertip. So it just has changed. And along the way, I've done so many things wrong, guys. The only thing that I've done correctly is I have a gourmet product that if you put it in your mouth, you'll be like, this is the best stuff I've ever eaten in my entire life. And then I've just continued to grind. I have worked my butt off. I always told my kids when they're growing up, overnight success takes about 7 to 15 years. And you think you're going to get into business and you're going to be an overnight success, you're going to find yourself working your butt off for the next 15 years. Before you actually make anything of it. So where I sit right now with my business, I thought we'd be here in year one, and we've really done incredible things, but it has been so much tougher than I have ever thought. I thought I could go on radio and just do a bunch of radio ads on ESPN. I had a local radio show, and I was just going to mention my green chili all the time. I thought, man, we'd be selling millions of dollars of green chili right off the bat. And you know what I found? As I was in grocery stores sampling and talking to customers, men 25 to 45 don't shop. I'm talking on the radio, pounding them over the head with green chili stats, and it's their wives and significant others that do all the shopping. Guys just flat don't shop. Start to learn things about where your message is coming from. And you're like, oh my God, I never even thought about that. So the best use of our money from an advertising standpoint, and I still run commercials, but I'd be in sampling, at Costco's or a grocery store, and I'd be slinging green chili, and I'd say, hey, come try, Schler's famous green chili, blah blah blah. People don't even know it's me, and guys would stop by. Oh, I hear Mark talking about it. They don't even know they're talking to me. I hear Mark talking about this all the time. Have you tried it? Oh, no, I don't ever grocery shop. I just happen to be in here because my wife drugged me in, And so you start learning that you're not really targeting the audience that's actually consuming your product or at least purchasing your product. So there isn't anything, essentially, that I've done correctly. But the one thing I have done is when I figure something out that's not correct, we correct it and we move forward. We've been very flexible that way. This has just been an incredible learning process for me.
Well, you talk about failing, and I love the saying. It's the acronym, really. It's called FAIL. It's your first attempt in learning. Okay, so nobody ever succeeded by making it on the first try. Think about Google. How many products did they fail at? Keep going forward, and Apple and everybody. They just keep going and going, basing their products on something that has failed before. All right. So you always want to keep going. I'd like to ask you a question about the NFL and not specifically current.
Good.
Yeah, I know. I'm staying away from that. Don't worry. My question really is, how has, with the advent of social media, and you've been there for 14 years, so you've seen it since its dawn, in this field that you're in with the athletes, and we see all sorts of athletes getting on trouble, what they're saying online.
Mm-hmm.
How has that really changed over the, there's always been off the field antics, but how has that really changed in the social media era? And then, how have you and your other colleagues, and, we always say something that seems innocuous online, but then it just blows up. How have you guys kind of stayed away from that? And because that's the impression that I'm trying to give them. Like, we may post something that we think among our friends is no big deal, but then somebody gets a hold of it. We talk about what's called a digital footprint, and that's the footprint online that follows you for the rest of your life. These are more tattoos than they are footprints anymore. So how have you guys seen this change, and how have you personally, and maybe some of your colleagues, kind of stayed away from that?
Well, I mean, I think every one of us has gotten in trouble a time or two for exactly that, saying something that you think is fairly innocuous, and the next thing you know, it blows up in your face. And we just try to have a set of guidelines. I'm terrible because I'm somewhat of a troll on Twitter sometimes, because people just say horrendous things to you.
Right.
And most of the time, my favorite things to do, and it's pretty, and again, I look at it as fairly innocuous, but when somebody will say, I think you're an absolute moron, you're an idiot, and I think you're horrible, and you're is spelled Y-O-U-R.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, speaking of idiots, it's Y-O-U-R-E, apostrophe E, if you're going to call me you're an idiot. So little things like that, I'll go after people that are rude sometimes, but I always do it. I never sink to the same level. I never go to the fact that if they're name calling and they're filthy, because obviously at ESPN we can't. But I never go to that level. I'll just point out essentially how off base they are, how rude they are. And it's been interesting because there are a lot of what I call Twitter tough guys, or people flexing their Twitter muscles. But the bottom line is, oftentimes, those trolls are out there, and there's not a whole lot you can do about them. But there are a lot of people who have said things that are just horrendous to me about me or my family, and it really doesn't affect me. I have thick skin. As we like to say in the National Football League, there's no virgin meat on this behind. It's all been chewed. So I've been cussed out one way, upside one side and down the other. So I'm pretty thick-skinned. But it does bother you when you have, when they attack your family. But I don't sink to that level. Now, interesting enough, I have a son that has pitched for 4 seasons in the major leagues. In the last 2 years, he's been hurt, so he's kind of bouncing around trying to get himself back in. He's signed with Detroit. But I've just told him he can't handle a Twitter account. And we've gone back and forth on it, and I was just like, absolutely not. You can't. You're not mature enough to handle it, because you will be putting people on public blast, and you'll be cussing at them and doing those things, and ultimately that can only lead to your downfall, and can only lead to bad things for you. So we've gone round and round on that. He doesn't have a Twitter account, and he realizes I'm correct. But we just try to use common sense, and I always say, don't say anything on Twitter that you wouldn't say on TV. Don't use any language you wouldn't say on TV. Don't use any terminology you wouldn't use on TV. Don't do it. And I got called not a couple of weeks ago, maybe months. I got called to the principal's office because somebody asked me a question about a colleague of mine, Skip Bayless. And I don't know if you guys ever watched Skip Bayless, but Skip Bayless is a opinionist. And so somebody asked me about, when Skip's spewing nonsense, how do you guys deal with that? And I go, nobody listens to it. And so I got a call from ESPN, hey, you can't say that. And I said, I've said that to him to his face on television a dozen times when he was trying to tell me something that he doesn't know anything about, that I can watch on film and say, this is why you're wrong, X, Y, and Z. So I told my bosses, and I didn't get in trouble, they just wanted to make me aware that it could be looked at as demeaning toward him and his profession. which, you know, I understand. I wasn't trying to be that way. I was just trying to be honest. When he starts spewing nonsense, I just don't listen to him because it's nonsense to me. So, but you have to be very careful, and the digital footprint is so correct. There are so many things out there, you know, that you're leaving out there in space that if somebody wants to go out and figure it out or go out and find it and hold you to it. As a matter of fact, it just happened the other day. I was doing my radio show, and Charles Barkley on TNT at night talked about how the analytics guys don't know anything, and they were the guys in high school that didn't have girlfriends and didn't get invited to the prom, you know, or couldn't get a date to the prom, and how they don't know basketball and they know nothing. Well, those same analytics guys dug up a tweet from 2 years ago from Charles where he said that James Harden going to Houston was a big waste of money because he wasn't even the best player on his team in Oklahoma City. And so basically Charles, through what he said on Twitter, and then because on that same show where he said the analytics guys don't know anything, look at James Harden. I can just see that he's great. And 2 years ago he said it was a big mistake for Houston to sign James Harden because James Harden wasn't any good. And so that digital footprint's out there. Of course, that hit every blogosphere and every website in America going, Charles talks out of both sides of his mouth, proves that he doesn't pay attention to what he says and doesn't pay attention to the game. And it's not like Charles is going to hurt Charles' brand at all because everybody knows that Charles is just on television talking nonsense a lot, and I love Charles, and he's great. But that show is purely entertainment. It's not necessarily based on fact all the time. But you know, it came back to make him look a little bit foolish because that digital footprint is out there.
Yeah, we have one of their projects that's coming up is they have to find someone who's actually ruined their career on social media and kind of talk about what are the ramifications, how this occurred, and you as an administrator, how would you kind of fix that issue? And actually, two of the examples, one was Larry Johnson, and the other is Rashard Mendenhall, so that they came up with. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and how that you're on here. So it just goes to show you, no matter how famous you are, you know, you'll lose endorsements, you'll lose, you know, you could lose everything. I mean, look at Larry Johnson. As soon as that happened, done. He was done. So, questions? Go ahead.
So you said it was all about like being first to stories and whatnot. So do you feel like social media is actually making your life harder? It's like of all the things they can say that you have to wait on. Do you feel like you miss stories sometimes, or?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm an analyst. I don't consider myself a journalist as much as I am an analyst. My dog came in here with a squeaky toy. Sorry. But so I analyze football. So I'm not trying to break stories. I'm not out there on the front lines being a reporter and being a journalist. But yeah, for those guys, it's made it a lot harder. And especially when you have trusted relationships and sources that you use, where a source tells you, I was sitting on a desk with Adam Schefter, and Adam Schefter is one of the best reporters in the business, and that guy is more connected than anybody. And he was dealing with a team. He had this whole contract thing laid out. It was a free agency contract deal, so he had it all laid out. He knew the parameters of the deal, and the organization asked him to please wait on it. And so, you know, they're trusted sources for him, but he had it already, so he waited on it, and as we were sitting on television, it broke on Twitter. And so now he's no longer first with that news, you know, and somebody got a tip, and it wasn't 100% correct, but the basic parameters of the deal, you know, were right, where the guy was going to a different team, and he was going to sign a free agent contract there. You know, Adam was furious, but you know, that's the difference that happens sometimes, where you're waiting on a source, or you're waiting to make sure that it's properly vetted and that you've got the right information. So, you know, it is harder for those guys. There's no question about it. For a guy like me, it's probably easier because my phone just rings all the time with, hey, this guy's going here, this guy's, you know, I got news at the fingertip. As soon as it breaks, somebody's putting it on there, so it's easier for me to keep up with the league.
Go ahead.
Did you ever find something on social media before it was like said to you?
About him himself or
Like-
in the business?
Like, as your job, like as a being ESPN, like, did you ever find something out through social media that broke out before it even got to you?
Yeah, yeah. I find things out on social media all the time before I knew of them or heard of them. So yeah, I follow a lot of the NFL news sources just because they'll break a lot of information. And then as an analyst and as a guy with connections in the league, I like to call guys. Even after the stories died down or whatever, you can call and you can get a lot of information off the record about how a certain player is, how he behaves himself, what kind of student he is, and a lot of things. A lot of times you'll see a play, and you think you have a pretty good idea of what's going on because of your experience in the league, but oftentimes I'll call guys and say, okay, this is what I saw. Is this what happened? And they'll be like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Or, no, you know what? We were in this particular defense, and that guy was actually a helper. And instead, it looks like he got beat, but it was actually the safety that didn't get over the top, or whatever the football jargon is. But yeah, certainly I've found a lot of things happen on social media before I knew they happened. And then you start making phone calls to see if there's anything to that story.
Just kind of wrapping up, I don't want to keep you, but we talked big picture, we talked ESPN, we talked NFL, but I'd like to talk to you as a small business owner. Forget that you played in the NFL, forget that you work for ESPN. As a small business owner, getting your green chili business off the ground, how has social media helped you with that aspect? And I know you had just joined Instagram not too long ago, so I mean, joining all these different services, I know it can be almost too much at times, but
correct.
Trying to get that business off the ground, how has that helped you rather than just starting, in a normal traditional fashion?
Right. Well, it certainly has helped. Just have the word out there, and have people have a buzz about it. So there's no question that has helped. The thing you'll find about any business, any small business, if you ever get started in a small business, and the learning experiences you have along the way, is regardless of how good your social media is, and regardless of how great your product is, and regardless of how many places you have it in, cash flow will always be your biggest issue. Because you don't get to dictate terms to big companies; they dictate to you. And so that has always kind of been the hardest thing to overcome for any small business, I believe, is cash flow issues. But certainly Twitter and certainly the social media aspect of what I do has helped just get the word out and get people interested in it, and get a lot of people. I get people that tweet me and send me pictures all the time of them, the way they use my product, and it really helps. The social media stuff really helps if I'm going to be somewhere sampling product, or if we want to run some contests, which we've had done in the past, where I don't know, whatever we do, I'll pick 10 people randomly who talk to me about my chili on Twitter over the next 3 hours or whatever, over the course of this football game, whatever it is, and then we'll send out chili and stuff. So it certainly has helped. It has helped spread the word, but it is not the most efficient way to garner new customers. I do know that. For me in the food business, the most efficient way is to be in the stores and put it in people's mouths and just giving them samples and letting them try it and educating them on how to use the product. And that's one of the things that's been so tough with our business is we're a fairly unique product, a fairly specialized product, and so it's not only taste it and people are like, oh my God, this is great, I love it. Okay, now educate me on how to use it. And so we've tried to do that on Twitter as well, with recipe contests and sending out recipes on how to use the product. So there's a lot more to the business aspect than I had ever anticipated, and I certainly got an education, or certainly have gotten an education over the last 6 years and continue to get one on a day-to-day basis. But it's been worth it because it's been a passion and it's been, you know, a great project, and it's been fun for me. You know, a word I'd leave you with is compete. I am always competing in everything I do, and I just think it's a vital part of everything that I do. And so I'm just going to compete my butt off, and regardless of what it is. You know, I always joke around, there's always a game going on. If you don't know what it is, you're probably the game. And right now I'm up on you guys 21-0. You don't even know what the game is. I'm whipping your butts. And I'm joking, but that's just how I operate. Everything I do in life is I try to compete and try to be the best at what I do, and it's just been kind of my nature in everything I've done. So it's just an important word to me, and the whole failure thing, as Kyle was saying about failure, is I always like to, I don't know who said it, but I'll take it like it's my own. Failure is not a person, it's an event. And, you know, I've gotten my butt whipped every way you can get it whipped. Financially, on a football field, you know, in a classroom, you name it, it's been whipped. But you know what? I dust myself off. I don't assign myself a failure. I assign that event a failure, and I move forward, and I keep competing. And that has been really, really been the secret to my success in everything that I've done.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate your time.
Mm.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Yeah, where are you guys at, by the way?
What's that? I'm sorry?
Where are you guys at, by the way?
We are about 20 miles north of Atlantic City.
Okay. Is it snowy there?
It was, yeah. We had a snow day yesterday.
Did you?
Yep. Well, you know, in New Jersey, that's nothing for you guys in Denver, but.
Well,
Yeah.
damn, we don't have Denver's. We got snow the other day, but it's like 60 degrees out and sunny again. So Denver's a really strange.
Out of here.
Yeah, Denver is 320 days of sunshine a year. It's second sunniest state in the United States behind Arizona.
Wow.
So ha ha. No, I'm just kidding.
We only had about 4 inches of snow, and they closed the whole state down. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that is. Well, I grew up in Alaska, so I empathize with you. I know a little bit about snow.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next season.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Take care and good luck.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.